There's a guy named Albert Einstein. Perhaps you've heard of him. He is quoted as saying, there are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. This statement suggests that one's outlook can drastically change their experience of life. And Dr. Dorothy, right here, her goal is to help your outlook turn toward that brighter side of life with her free masterclass lunch experience entitled A Million Little Miracles. And we're going to discuss that today and so much more on this episode of Someone You Should Know, brought to you by the Ed Morse Automotive Group. Sierra Vista and Cochise County are backed by Morse. Dr. Dorothy, lovely to see you today.
Nice to see you
Thank
again,
you so much for
Jeff.
taking the time to talk to us today.
My
You
pleasure.
are a coach, an author, a speaker, an entrepreneur, and a mentor. But I would venture to say that all of those titles stem from two specific titles, and that being a military spouse and a mom.
Yes.
And since Sierra Vista, and of course all of Cochise County, has such a high percentage of active duty and retired military, was it the military that initially brought you here to Sierra Vista?
Absolutely.
Tell us about that.
My husband, we grew up in Texas. In fact, we met in high school. So and that was back in the 60s. He always wanted to be a cowboy, and he wanted to be an Army Ranger. And he, even in high school, when I met him, and I thought, oh, this guy's adorable. But I met him, and he would say, I'm going to be an Army Ranger. I'm going to jump out of airplanes. And I would think, oh, gosh, he's just, But I didn't want to live that kind of lifestyle. I grew up with deep roots in the Houston area of Texas. Texas is more than a state. It's a state of mind. People you're programmed to think, why would anyone ever want to leave the borders of Texas? And I believed that, that was my experience. I was a small town Texas girl. And the idea, I knew I wanted to be a mom and I wanted to be a good wife, but also I was very closely connected to my birth family. I have one brother. And, the thought of just being away from lifelong friends, I went all the way through school there in LaPorte, Texas. And I'm still connected to those people. But to me, I felt like it would be a disconnection that I couldn't repair. I couldn't reverse. And so what I've learned, and one of the things that I want to share with military wives and families, is that, yes, it's challenging. Yes, you connect, you disconnect. But along the way, I learned that you connect in so many different ways. And, I'm a part of the John Maxwell team, and, they train us in leadership and speaking and so forth. And one of the things he says is that being older does not guarantee wisdom. Yes, you have more experience than someone who's in their 20s or 30s. But I know some people who are old in their 20s, and I know some people who are young in their 80s. And so, it's evaluated experience. So as we got to Sierra Vista, Frank, he loves still the cowboy legends and stuff. So Tombstone.
Right at home.
Yes,
right
it had always been, the legends of Tombstone. And so he kept asking to come to Fort Huachuca. And so Army, he was with Defense Intelligence at the time. And so they loaned him back to Army, and they loaned him out here to come out here and teach at the school at Fort Huachuca. That's what brought us here. And in 2 years, we were supposed to go back to the Washington, D.C. area, where we'd lived off and on for about 20 years. We'd go abroad, go back to Washington, go abroad, go back to Washington. So all of those experiences were under my belt when we got to Sierra Vista. And it, we didn't expect to want to stay, but opportunities opened up. This community embraced us, maybe unlike any other community that we'd lived in. And it's just been a series of little miracles that back in the day, as I was going through daily life and trying to be the best I could be, but I didn't understand any of it. I didn't understand the uncertainty, the disconnection, the insignificance as I began to evaluate and reflect, because that's so important. But as I did that and I assessed it, I realized that without having served as a military wife and mom and now educator, that I wouldn't be who I am today. And so I have a lot of evaluated experience to bring to the table. And Jeff, what was so challenging in the beginning is my husband and our sons, when I began to try to put into words what my experience had been, and I didn't have the words for it, they were like, well, what? Frank was like, well, what are you saying? Are you saying you were miserable for 40 years and you never said anything? I said, no, that's not what I'm saying. Well, what are you saying? I don't know, but I'll find the words. The boys were like, well, we thought we had a great life. You know what are you saying, Mom? And look at all the things you've gotten to do and the opportunities. And, and I just kept evaluating. I kept reflecting. I kept writing. I kept working on it. I got coaches. Coaching is very important. And, it's all on the inside. You just have to recognize it. But I didn't even recognize that my best serve was to go and serve military families, many of whom were struggling with so many of the same issues.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask. I mean, as far as obviously all of your military spouse career was what sparked that interest in becoming the voice of wisdom for the global military community. But when it comes to specific techniques and tools and strategies, when coaching military families, how does that differ from coaching civilian families? What are the differences from a coach's standpoint when helping those military spouses and military families versus civilians?
Well, I've had a lot of people argue, why did you write your book, Loving Your Life for Military Wives? Because when they read it, when they read it, they say this applies to anyone and everyone, because I took the wheel of life and I wrote into each segment of parts of our lives that we live every day, and whether that be faith, family, finances. I took that, but I wrote it from my understanding of what I'd gone through as a military wife. And that's my heart. That's whom I want to serve most. But as far as the tools and the strategies, it's really, it would serve anyone. So this lunch experience, my husband's an Army Ranger, and they're programmed. Oh, thank you. They're programmed to believe that, PTSD, that doesn't happen to Army Rangers. They may cause it, but they don't get it. So we've had discussions around that. And I call it soul wounds, that you can't be. He started in Vietnam and he served in 5 war zones. So, they're programmed to be brave, to go into battle, to do what's necessary in service to the country. They are, focused patriots. And as a military spouse, having grown up in this warm, fuzzy cocoon, I call it, and then being sort of forced out there in the larger world, I was not at all prepared for some of the challenges inherent in that. And I was with a coach in Chicago for a full day. And she was saying, well, what made it so hard for you? And as I began to think about it, the 3 pillars of what I would call is the biggest challenge for military families is that I would connect, and just about the time I had to disconnect, and then I'd reconnect in the new community. And about the time I felt I fit in or I, could make a difference, you had to go again. And you didn't know when that was going to be. So when I started trying to tell her, it wouldn't come out, like a frog in your throat, because you feel it so deeply that it, and it's so painful that it's been there, but you didn't have any words for it. Well, she held the space. She was younger than I was, very wise. She just stayed quiet and held the space. A lot of people, if there's a silence, they want to fill the void. She just listened. And so with tears in my eyes, I said, well, I felt disconnected. I felt uncertain. And at the end of his career, his active duty career, I felt insignificant, even though I had done some amazing things. And I couldn't get my head around that. So I kept reading and studying and meditating and joined the John Maxwell team, which was one of my turning points. And I began to really evaluate experience. And so, can I help military families more than anyone else? I think so, just because I lived as a military spouse. He's still an Army Ranger, is always an Army Ranger, like a Marine is always a Marine. So he's still that person. And I have learned that what I want to transfer to young military wives in particular and families is that you can be all that you can be.
I've heard that phrase before somewhere.
Yeah, be all you can be. That's a great Army. That was a great tagline. It was. Nobody forgets that. But you can be all you can be. Yeah. While he's being who he was created to be, or she.
Yeah.
There are a lot of females.
Exactly. No, great point.
Yeah. And so take that opportunity. Take that opportunity. And with technology today, which is my biggest challenge as an older, person, I was just telling him, we didn't have computers when I was growing up. My learning curve in technology is huge,
right?
But I'm determined because I know I have value to bring from my examined experience to these families. I love people, which is one of the reasons I didn't want to be a high school principal. But what I did.
But you were, and you did, and you accomplished that, and you did amazing things at CAS,
we did.
That we talked about before we went live. I mean, these are all the amazing stories that you have from your life, and maybe that's a question, because in a world that's full of distractions with all of the technology that's out there, how do you keep your clients, the people that you're speaking to and working with, how do you keep them focused and motivated?
Well, just recently, one of my biggest realizations was when I picked up this book. All right, and this is why I'm doing the lunch experience. I'm always reading. I love to read, and I convinced my husband a few years ago. He had some major challenges to go through, some surgeries, serious surgeries, and he's an upbeat kind of guy. And yet he was really struggling. And I said, Frank, I've done some research around, there's a lot of research now, books on happiness and find your joy. And I said, if you write down 5 things that you're grateful for, or even 3 on a regular basis, be consistent, your joy meter goes up by at least 25% within 2 weeks. And he was like, And I said, let's try it. Let's just try it. I challenge you to try it. And so we began to do a gratitude journal together. I bought a journal. We sit down. That's how we start our day. This is something I teach my families.
Now, military Rangers don't do journaling already? I thought they don't journal. That must be something strange for
That's a foreign concept. Yeah, I mean, I had to do a sales job on that one.
I bet.
But we sat down. We began to do it. And now, Jeff, when we travel, he packs the journal.
Wow.
He packs the journal. So here's how this came about. I brought this book out.
Yes.
A Million Little Miracles.
There it is right there.
Okay.
Here, we'll put that one right here for a second.
All right. I had read Mark Batterson's about 3 of his books prior. And they're incredible. And so then I began to kind of research him. And he's a living miracle. I mean, he's built National Community Church on Capitol Hill. And he said that was kind of his download from God, was to put a church on Capitol Hill. I've lived and worked down near the Capitol. I know the atmosphere, of the stress level that people deal with and how easy it is to lose sight of what's really important. What really matters, at the end of the day and at the beginning of the day. If you take a gratitude journal and you bring it to mind, you have to be intentional. Okay. And so, I brought it out and I said, let's read this, just a little, a chapter a day. And I'd done that with other books, and he ended up enjoying them. And at first he kind of pushes back, but that's just Army Rangers. And so he he first said no. And I said, okay, I'm gonna make you a deal you can't refuse, like The Godfather. He loves that movie. And I said, I will read you the intro in chapter 1. And if you don't want to go forward, I'll finish it myself. I'll go in my prayer chair. I start every morning, and I'll finish it myself. And he was like, well, okay, So I read the intro. Second day, he said, I'll read chapter 1 to you. So he read it to me. And at the end of that, I said, okay, I'm true to my word. And if you don't want to go forward, I won't complain. I'll let it be. And he said, no, let's finish reading. So at the end of each chapter, and this was not contrived. It was not, but at the end of each chapter, and he would lay it down, by the journal, and I would say, oh, I love this book. It was just intuitive. It was like, I love this book. And at the end of chapter 8, unexpectedly, when I said, I love this book, I feel like, and he'd kind of roll his eyes, he's always doing the ranger thing. And I don't let it stop me.
No.
He's learned to just let it go, But but I picked it up and I said, I love this book. And God just downloaded, teach it.
Mm.
And so I went to my prayer chair and I sat down with it. Oh, and I added to Frank, this before I left Frank, I said, I think it has equaled or surpassed Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor. And he has an incredible story of miracles in his own right. And that's always been my favorite book of all times until this. I'm not going to say it surpasses it, because when you live the kind of horror that he had been through, but a lot of our military veterans have also lived that sort of horror. Yeah. And when you can survive that and still be positive, it's such a gift. Not only is it a gift to yourself, but it's a gift to anyone with whom you come in contact. But ever since COVID, and I think there's two reasons why this resonated so deeply with me. It just resounded in my soul. And when he said, teach it, I went to my prayer chair and I said, okay, I need to be working on my military wife content. And I have a young man working with me with my website. And he was like, when I said what I was going to do, he said, what are you doing? You need to teach your own book. Why are you teaching someone else's book and promoting someone else's book? And I said, because I just know that's what I'm supposed to do. And when I said, okay, when am I supposed to do this? Because I was developing content for online for military wives and families. And he answered me, on your daddy's birthday. My daddy was one of my greatest cheerleaders. And that's September 3rd. So the first event is on September 3rd. And then I thought it through and I thought, oh, well, some people may be out of town or for various reasons can't come that day. I want to make it a second offer. And so I did. I said, okay, 2 weeks later, I'll just repeat, the lunch experience. And then I asked him, I said, okay, am I supposed to charge for my time and effort and the work that I will put in? He said, no, it's a gift to your community. And so it's a gift to the community. And because journaling has been so powerful, a tool for me, it's a great strategy. It takes discipline and it takes being intentional. But even my Army Ranger, if he's honest, I'm going to try to get him to kind of participate a little bit. We'll see. But, it has been so powerful for him because so many people just skim the surface. And ever since COVID 2020, I feel, because I'm very intuitive and I feel things that Frank says I'm weird. He wants my brain studied when I'm gone, but I feel things so deeply. And I feel like, and people were masked. You couldn't even see their smile.
Right.
We were fearful. It was all rooted in fear and people were afraid of each other. Even being in proximity to someone, it was a terrible global crisis. And it has affected the way we look at life, I think. And so it's just full, it's science-based. It's not like reading. I tell people it's not easy reading, but it's so meaningful, deeply meaningful. And it just made my heart soar. And I just want to share it with people. I want to renew their hope. I want to be an ambassador for hope and recapture the joy.
I love that. I love that. this Masterclass Lunch Experience, September 3rd, September 17th, both Wednesdays.
Yes.
What is it, 11:30 to 1 p.m.? How
Yes.
can someone absolutely free register for this, or pre-register, or
Yes.
sign up for it?
Yes. I have some flyers, a few places.
Yeah.
I did this
Oh yeah,
magazine.
South Sierra Vista magazine.
Yeah, I did the
Yeah.
magazine, and Colleen,
Yeah.
put that out to, I don't know, I think she said 3,000, 4,000 families that
Yeah.
it distributes to. So that's all in there. I've put these a few places around town, but this is a great article, and it kind of gives, one of my really good friends here said, well, the miracle that I focused on in my story here was when we were in the Middle East, and an opportunity that, again, was a download and it was an educational project that I was awarded a contract to do for their Ministry of Education. And
in Oman, right?
In Oman, in Muscat, Oman. Well, I went all over the country. I went into villages where people, I would wrap my hair because they were used to seeing dark eyes and dark hair, and they would want to just touch my hair, touch my eyes. They were not rude; they were curious, and so I would dress very, very covered, but I had to go into villages where they just hadn't seen people like me. And the fact that they gave me the opportunity as a Western female to lead a project with an all-Arab team, I was the only American, that's the miracle that I focused on in this article. And Pauline asked me, she said, why didn't you talk about being principal at Cass and beginning to turn that school around, and that they're now successful? And I said, that was also a godsend, and we experienced some miracles there. I had students on the Brown Canyon Ranch project who said, had we not had the ranch project, I would have dropped out of high school. I mean, that's music to an educator's ears, so the real miracle happened there. That's when I began to really because my husband, when I had this idea, and this gentleman's name had been given to who had invited us to, it was their national day, but it was like a 20-year anniversary of the Sultan's reign. So we had a special invitation to come to the stadium and be part of that day. And it was just one of those magical days. And we were sitting there, and the gentleman who had invited us, his name had been given to me in Washington. I was working for the National Council on U.S. Arab Relations. And his name had been given to me, and they said he's a Harvard PhD, brilliant man, and he's been in the country, and he's set up a institute for music, traditional music and dance, and he's been, decorated by the Sultan, and he writes symphonies and things like, miracles. The Sultan loved classical music, so Dr. Shalki wrote a symphony, the music, the score for Omania, beautiful Oman, and for the Sultan. And when it was presented to the Sultan, here's the kind of thing that can happen. People put limits. We put our finite mindset around things that we don't pay attention to the miracles all around. But Dr. Shalki did all this, and the Sultan recognized the brilliance of it. So he decided he was going to send villagers from all around that country who played things like these cow horn kind of things, and drums, that they made, out of cans and things like that. Traditional musicians, and he selected them from different parts of the country, flew them to London, had the London Symphony Orchestra and the traditional musicians perform Omania, and then he flew all London Symphony Orchestra and his traditional musicians to Muscat, built an incredible facility for concerts, and the Albuston Hotel. I'll never forget the first time I saw it. I was like speechless, the beauty of it all. So anyway, that's the kind of thing that I had seen happen and been part of. So when I met Dr. Shuggy, his name was given to me. Met him he was from Egypt. Arabic was his mother language, but he spoke, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 languages fluently. And he invited us to go. We were sitting there, and he was translating the Sultan's speech. This is in my article in the magazine. He was translating just flawlessly. And as he was talking about all the phenomenal change taking place in the Gulf region, with all of the wealth that had come in, you know, with the oil resources, and he was talking to people about, don't lose sight of what makes you uniquely Omani, what makes you uniquely Jeff, what makes me uniquely Dorothy. Don't lose sight of, you know, that core insight of who you are and who we are as a people. We're a seafaring nation. We, you know, tradition, culture, you matter. That matters. You know, identity issues matter. You know, because they were doing things like taking, you know, carved wooden doors and windows and replacing them with bright colored metal. And it just, I'd already lived in Saudi Arabia for 2 years. And then we went back to Washington, and now we were in Muscat. And so I had observed all this phenomenal change. And I used to wonder, how do they cope with daily life, with all the things that are changing around them? How do you hold on to that deep, you know, what are your core values? What are your non-negotiables when you're in that kind of environment? And so I'd already been aware of that. And it was like, as he was delivering what the Sultan was saying, I said, you know, I see these young people driving around in Lamborghinis and Mercedes, and they don't value, just kind of like American teens, you know, are unaware and have feel entitled. And, you know, I just want to say, let me talk to you for a few minutes, you know. But I said, if he's going to make the kind of change or prevent the kind of phenomenal change going forward without appreciating their roots, who are you? Don't forget where you came from. And Dr. Shauki, who was, like I said, brilliant, but he was also very arrogant. And it was like, he looked at me, and because I just met him, not, you know, at this reception at the Egyptian embassy. And he said, how do you know that? I said, he's going to have to reach his young people, and he needs to do it through his school system. And he said, how do you know that? And I said, I'm an educator. I have several years experience teaching in a classroom, and, you know, I love education. I knew I wanted to be a teacher when I was a youngster, and I'd lay out in the front yard of my parents' home and look at the clouds. This is relevant to who I am now and why I'm doing what I'm doing. I would lay there and I would dream of catching a cloud. I've always had a vivid imagination, and just going from place to place and exotic things, and, you know, magic carpet, like. But I didn't think it was possible for me. And I realize now, looking back, that agreeing to become an Army wife, particularly an Army Ranger, you know, these special forces guys are so mission focused. And when I would say, you know, I was struggling, and I felt like every time I felt like I fit in somewhere, I had to leave again. I felt disconnected. I didn't know. I was uncertain when, where, what, you know. Could I find a job? That's a big struggle for military wives, because the community knows you're only there temporarily. And if they invest in you, you're gone. You know, so they have some unique challenges. And I understand them because I've lived them. You know, we've been married 55 years now. And I have such a heart for just conveying to them, you know, let's wake up together. You know, if I had had a senior spouse come and say to me, you know, I understand exactly what you're dealing with, and I will walk side by side with you, with your kids, because I know the struggle for military kids. with your husbands who don't realize generally what you're going through. And if you do, let them know. Because Frank said, did you just not tell me, the struggle for 40 plus years? And I said, no, I didn't. That's not me to sit around crying my beer. But I was struggling and I had no mentor or a framework of understanding. And that's what I'm working on now, is I'm trying to put together some online content that, will just give them the strategies and the tools and the mindset and the heart set. Because when I started reading miracles, I didn't see them at all. I felt like I was surviving the days and not thriving. I remember when we were in DC and the boys were starting college. And I remember thinking, I feel like I've gotten so much. I've had so many gifts brought to me, miracles. But I don't feel like I'm giving back. And, that Viktor Frankl, when he was a psychiatrist in Vienna and lost his family, he went through terrible horror. But he said he studied what are the common denominators of the survivors. And in each case, they had something within them that they knew was yet unfinished or was bigger than they are, and they had to live into that purpose. I want that for everyone. And I'm hoping that this lunch experience, even though it's brief, will strike that chord within them. And together, as a community, we begin to recognize the miracles.
Well, I think this is already exciting everybody about this. The Masterclass Lunch Experience, A Million Little Miracles, a free gift to Sierra Vista and the Fort Huachuca community, September 3rd. September 17th, 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. In the post description, what I did was, you have a little QR code here.
Yes.
And what I did was I took the link to that QR code and I put it in the post description so people can tap that and go straight to it.
Go straight to my website.
Exactly. And learn more about that. What are some examples of everyday miracles? Maybe people are watching this right now and go, I don't deal with miracles. I don't see miracles every day.
Yeah.
Are there miracles that happen every day?
Every day.
Such as?
Every day. You have to raise your awareness of it. Your breath. What if the next breath didn't come? A sunset, a sunrise. Arizona has some of the most spectacular skies I've seen around the world. And the only other place I've seen skies as vibrant as here in southern Arizona, it was in Africa. We were in Malawi, Africa, and they had very little cars or anything to pollute. But I mean, they were I remember, how many experiences have you had that take your breath away?
Yeah.
The skies can do it. But I mean, people, you don't pay attention. Our breath, our eyesight, he lists them. I mean, they're in here, how your body works, our body it processes like 300 billion cells a day, it sort of updates and upgrades. We don't have anything to do with it. That's a miracle. They're all around us. I have a friend right now that was telling me this morning that he has a big idea and he needed funding for it. And he said, it's just amazing. His wife went to the dentist and there was like a $500 bill. And for whatever reason that they wiped it out. It was just, he said, it was like a little miracle. It became part of funding that he needs to create his big idea. And they're all around us. I mean, they just, how our body processes are incredible. I'm going to, when you're 80 years old, okay, when you're 80 years old, you have lived, if you get the gift of turning 80, I will turn 80 in January.
Oh my goodness.
And so my oldest son brought this to my attention. He said, there's a book, 4,000 Weeks. And he said, I want you to take a look at it, Mom, because it's kind of part of what you're talking about. He said, when you turn 80 in January 2nd, when you turn 80, you will have lived 4,160 weeks. And you're always talking about the importance of legacy. You know, what do you want your legacy? What do you want people to remember? If somebody listed the top 3 people, we're going to do this exercise at the luncheon. But if they listed the top 3 people who made a difference in their lives and why, would you ever be in that top 3? You know, what are you doing to make that difference, to add that value? And it doesn't happen without being intentional and aware. This is an awareness thing. So I feel this lack of hope. I feel a lack of trust. You know, we've gotten where we're afraid to even trust, you know, the NIH, for God's sake, you know, with information since COVID.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't know who to believe. AI has become so advanced that you're not sure if it's real or not real.
Right.
You know,
Just
how
ask
do you...
Amy Klobuchar that. You know? I mean,
Yeah.
it's true. I mean,
Yeah,
something
it
happens.
is.
Yeah.
So how do you hold on? You know, how do you ground yourself? You know, think about legacy.
Yeah.
Think about miracles. Raise your awareness. Hold on to hope. If you've lost your hope, embrace it. You know, I'm going to be an ambassador of hope for Sierra Vista. You know?
Well, you are, and you have been today, just in this little talk here. By the way, this book is available on Amazon, that people can go and get it. It is Loving Your Life, 7 Steps for Military Wives. And of course, this luncheon, the Masterclass Lunch Experience, not just for military, it's for civilians as well, because just like family member said, anybody can get things out of this. So if you are looking for ways to find those little miracles, to find those things in your life, to bring more value to humanity and just to help yourself, if
and your
nothing
family.
else.
Yes.
That's what Dr. Dorothy's here for. Dr. Dorothy is ready to do that. September 3rd and September 17th. Both of those are Wednesdays, 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. Get your registration in for this free experience, absolutely free. In the post description, you will see the website link there to get to her website and learn more about this. And then, you know, get a copy of her book. And you see her around town. She lives here. She's here in Sierra Vista. We know Dr. Dorothy. And so seeing you around here and doing something like this, first of all, thank you. Thank you for taking the energy and everything to be able to put into something like this and to share this amazing experience that you've had, and just taking little nuggets out of it to share with me today. Thank you for that.
You're
and
welcome.
Then for what you're going to do on Wednesday, September 3rd and Wednesday, September 17th. All the details are in the post description below.
Yes.
Before we go, last question. What do you love most about being a life coach? Is such a weird, sometimes a weird connotation to say that, but I think it's important to have coaches.
Absolutely.
It's important to have people who you learn from, teachers, coaches.
Yes.
I mean, they're kind of synonymous with each other.
They are.
What is one of the things that you love most? I think you referenced it a little bit earlier, but what is something you love most about being a life coach?
A coach, you know, one of the things that I didn't recognize until I joined John Maxwell team is, you know, a lot of people resist counseling and seeking help or advice because they sort of see it as being weak and admitting, you know, that you can't handle things. Coaching, you know, where a counselor or a psychiatrist, or not that that's bad.
No.
But, you know, they generally look back and make sense of your past, what's happened to you. John Maxwell says, yesterday ended last night. And when you're a coach, you sit down with people and you have them begin, if they had a magic wand, what would your life look like if you could create anything without being concerned about resources, money, place, time frame? You could just create. Because when we were kids, just like I said, I'd lay out in the front yard and imagine. But I didn't think it was really possible. It is possible, you know. So I'm an ambassador of hope. You know, recapture the wonder that you had when you were a kid, and then what do you want? What's in your heart to go and do that can make a difference? That when somebody does list their top 3 people or top 5 people, you might be one of those people. I mean, how cool is that?
It's pretty amazing.
You know, it's amazing. And then the last piece of that puzzle, and this will be our second practical exercise, the last piece of that puzzle is you can become someone else's miracle. And so when you've done the first exercise and it brings to mind, and if they're still alive, I tell them, you have to take action. If you can tell them, tell them. If you just journal it, because that in itself creates a whole set of vibrations that go out. But then decide, okay, list 3 people or 5 people that I can touch, that I can make a difference, that I will take action. What will that be? Who will that be? And every day, go and do it. You become the miracle for someone else.
It's a brilliant concept, and we know that if you are looking for something like this, the inspiration, the way to reach other people and to be a part of this community to an even greater degree, just do what Dr. Dorothy says. Just do what she says, read her book, and definitely attend A Million Little Miracles, the Masterclass Lunch Experience, the free gift to Sierra Vista and Fort Huachuca community, Wednesday, September 3rd, Wednesday, September 17th,
yes,
11:30 to 1.
If they need to come to the second one, they need to scroll down.
Yes.
Okay,
right
scroll
there.
down when you go to the QR code, and it'll send you directly, give you a link to my website. The first one comes up, and then it shows the article, in virtual article.
Yeah.
But you've got to go down below that for the second event.
Perfect.
Okay.
Well,
and I
will do that. Actually, this one's prettier. It's in color.
Yeah.
That's prettier than my black and white copy that I have here, right there. That's it right there.
Yeah.
That is the flyer for A Million Little Miracles Masterclass Lunch Experience.
And just so they know, I have 15 and 15 already, and I had to cap it at 20 for now.
Okay.
And if it's well received and people receive great joy and go forward and make a difference, then, we can do it again.
It's so much fun to think about the difference that we can make in the lives of others.
Yes.
And you can learn more about that by attending Wednesday, September 3rd or Wednesday, September 17th. Spots are booking up fast, so it is time to go to that website in the post description and make sure you register for free. This free luncheon, Masterclass Lunch Experience that Dr. Dorothy has put together. Dr. Dorothy, thank you so much for letting us talk to you today. She is definitely someone you should know. Thank you for watching this episode of Someone You Should Know with Jeff Davenport and Dr. Dorothy. And it's brought to you by our good friends at the Morse Automotive Group, Sierra Vista and Cochise County, backed by Morse. For all the details, all the information, be sure to check the post description. And by all means, if you are able to go to this free Masterclass Luncheon Experience with Dr. Dorothy, make plans to do it. Set time aside. I promise you will get so much more out of it than you could ever imagine. That's waiting for you to know that you are the miracle for someone else.
Amen.
Here today and for the future in our community. Have a great day, everybody. Learn more in the post description. Thank you for sharing this. Tag your friends and family who you think have made a difference in your life. Tag them. Let them see Dr. Dorothy and hear about her experiences, and let them know that you were impacted by their lives as well. Let's use this chat for something really positive in this post today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing. And thank you to the Morse Automotive Group. Have a great day, everybody. We'll check in with you again later on.
Thank you.